So, hello everybody. Welcome to episode 2 of the Strong Nerd Show, where we're moderately strong and extremely nerdy. We have the wonderful Krista Scott Dixon on the podcast. We made it past podcast 1. I feel like that is a successful step. This is a milestone.
Good work.
Number 2 is a milestone for me. So, I was actually thinking of you yesterday. It actually snowed in South Texas, and I was like, this is kind of what Canada must be like. The mythical white land of the North. Anyways, I have lots of questions today, so I'm not going to do the super long guest bio. And KSD is somewhat famous in the fitness and health world, but a little bit about her. She is the director of Headspace Adjustment at PN, speaker, author, overall badass, and the greatest behavior change expert, and I think maybe one of the best in the world at coaching coaches how to coach. But it's also like you coach coaches how to coach other coaches. So I don't know like where that ends, but it's like you're the godmother of all coaching a little bit. But still like
it's just turtles all the way down.
Yeah.
Just coaching all the way down.
Exactly. So a quick backstory of kind of how I found you. So I went through PN level 1 and 2, and every day I would get the email and it was like from Krista Scott Dixon. So after a few years of that, I was like, I've got to meet this lady. And so we've been working together for about 5 months on kind of a one-on-one basis. And again, I just want to say thank you. You're super busy writing like 3 books, speaking all the time, doing seminars and all your PN things, and then your regular coaching clients. And you still made so much time for me. So I'm super grateful that you even exist. So I'll try to keep the intense emotional affirmations, to a tolerable level, but thank you. You're the best.
Thank you. No, I'm enjoying them. I feel like we should just push into that.
Yeah, just lean into that.
Just go there. Yes.
So I encourage anyone who's looking to get better at kind of facilitating the process of behavior change to, definitely look up PN and then try to work with Krista as well if possible. So the format of the show is a little bit all over the place. So I kind of want to share some of the nuggets that we've talked about and we've worked on. We'll dig into some nerdy topics I would kind of want to hear you rap about, and I've also got some Tim Ferriss-y type questions. I'm not sure if you're a Tim Ferriss fan, but that's actually the first thing I want to talk about, just kind of break the ice here. Tell me about, I know you recently posted about Ray Dalio's principles, and so I'm wondering if you could talk about some of the takeaways you had or kind of things you liked about it, anything you've implemented, any of that stuff.
Yeah, I mean, and first of all, I should say that it was one of the co-founders of Precision Nutrition, Phil Caravaggio, that turned me on to Ray Dalio. And he loved Ray Dalio's stuff so much. I think he actually re-typeset the book and sent it to Ray as like a gift, just because that's the kind of thing what Phil would do. So he sort of blew Ray's mind a little bit. But so he at PN, we have implemented a lot of the principles that Ray Dalio talks about. And so then I was like, okay, I got to read this for myself. And I'd heard Phil talk about it over the years. And so it's really embedded in the fabric of a lot of what we do in terms of like how we organize work. And so if you haven't read this book, it's sort of principles for work and principles for life. And obviously those two are connected if you're doing any kind of meaningful work. But reading it myself just recently, I was really struck by the concept of confronting reality as it is. So he has this idea of like, you have to deal with reality as it is, not as you would like it to be. Because I mean, all of us are like full of shoulds and, oh, I wish it was this way, or kind of a disbelief that it is that way, right? Even simple, stupid stuff. Like last night it was 7:00. My body was like, hey, let's go to bed. And I was like, that's stupid. It's only 7:00. My body was like, I don't know what to tell you, bro. And I was like, that's a classic example of simply not accepting reality. The signal is there. It's like, let's do this. And you're like, but that can't be right because the clock, this external thing says something different. So, he has this idea of accepting reality as it is. And in coaching, if you're in nutrition coaching and fitness coaching, the application there is, what is the body saying? What is the evidence saying? And one thing that happens all the time is clients are like, oh, I don't really think I'm that stressed out, or I think I'm handling everything okay, but their body is just on fire, right?
Like the evidence would show us that something's happening here.
Exactly. Like if I look inside your blood, it's like just, you don't even have red blood cells. It's just tiny little flaming tires. Like So we so often find ourselves in situations either with ourselves or with our clients in which we're trying to defy reality. And if you argue with reality, you will always lose.
Right.
So that's a great one. And then there's another one that I loved was this idea of radical open-mindedness. And he has this concept of believability. So who is believable? And of course, in the fitness health industry, that's a great question to ask, because anyone can call themselves a guru or an authority or an expert. If you're good looking and you have abs, you can be a fitness expert, right?
Yeah.
So his idea of believability is, have you done, like demonstrably, have you shown that you can do something successfully at least 3 times? So if you're going to call yourself a strength expert, have you done something strength related demonstrably well at least 3 times? Have you put in a good strength performance at least 3 times under supervision, right? Not like whatever you claim on the internet. And then, can you show the reasoning process that led you to your conclusions? So if you're a strength expert and you're making a recommendation about how to squat, can you explain your logic and your reasoning? And this is something we do in the Precision Nutrition Level 2 thing as well, where we do case studies, but what we're really interested in is not so much getting the right answer, but showing the process of your reasoning. How are you thinking this through? So experts should be believable. They should be able to show their logic, and they should be willing to discuss it. So he deliberately seeks out people who disagree with him, who are believable and can show their logic.
Right.
And that's how he makes decisions. And so I just thought that was such a wonderful way to think about it, because how often do we seek out people who disagree with us?
Right.
Who don't just disagree with us, again, like flame wars on the internet, but like disagree with us in a way that we have to go,
Yeah. It's a little bit uncomfortable. And then we live in sort of the, I guess, the filter bubble of like you're kind of curating your own experience, especially in, 2018 world online, of like just what you want to see. You kind of live in this community and choose what you want to see. And then, that's great. I love how you guys have kind of baked that into even the corporate culture at PN. Super cool.
Totally. And just like one more piece about that, the filter bubble is a great, I'm glad you brought that up, because what happens is when we hear people who agree with us, we tend to downgrade the level of evidence that we're looking for from them, right? So if someone agrees with me, I'm like, oh, they agree with me. That's awesome. I must be right. And I don't ask for a lot of evidence from them. Right. It's just how our brains work. Whereas if someone does disagree with me, I'm like, prove yourself, sir.
Yeah.
Explain to me. So, we really need to be aware of our own cognitive biases in all fields and demand the best level of evidence from everyone, and be especially careful with what we agree with. If it's a little bit too easy, we might want to question ourselves and be like, I don't know if I'm comfortable with that.
Right.
Like we have to push ourselves into the zone of reasoning discomfort.
Right. And so this week, I'm preparing to talk to you. I listened to all of your podcasts because I'm crazy, and they're amazing. They're awesome. I learned so much. Like I would recommend anyone. It's like I'm actually going to re-go through them. There's just so many good things. But one of the things you talked about was like that really resonated with me and made me self-reflect a little bit. Was like how if you feel like you really have got it. Like you've got the answers. Like if someone's going to come to you, like you know what they need, and they need something that's worked for you before, and you're like very passionate about this one system that you're probably haven't, got to the realm of like, very experienced yet. You're probably still in that middle range of like, you need to see a few more things and realize that everyone is an N of one, and that, nothing works for everyone, and that there's no real magic out there. So, I really like that. So on that same note, as far as like honest feedback, one thing we did when we worked together was I took notes of, my levels of, anxiety with clients. If a client maybe wasn't getting results, and we can talk more about the results thing too, but I would just record some of my interactions and then kind of even, kind of report back on my anxiety levels with one client, what led to it, and this kind of self-awareness exercise, and then get your feedback on that. And that was super helpful for me. That kind of led to some really good breakthroughs. And one question I had on just feedback in general, I've heard you mention that for coaches, getting feedback on the process of behavior change, especially with, non-athlete, just gen pop clients, so to speak, which is the sort of the focus of this podcast. What are some other ways to kind of get feedback from another coach? I've heard you mention like maybe even like recording your interaction with a client. Maybe you could talk more about that, or some things that you've seen work in the past to help a coach get that, sort of Ray Dalio like super brutal feedback on what's good or bad about their methods and all that stuff.
Yeah, recording your sessions is a terrific way to do it, and an easy way to just preserve, obviously ask your clients beforehand if that's okay, but an easy way to preserve client comfort, or at least anonymity, is to just put the camera on yourself, right? Just take your phone, flip it so it's facing you, so we don't see the client, we hear their voice. The client has consented to, have their voice be heard. And that's awesome, record it, share it with someone else, say, hey, what do you think? And you can look for specific things too. I mean, one of the things about feedback is it should be actionable information, right? It's not just like good job. Like that's useless, honestly. Like we all like to hear good job, but it's not helpful. It should be stuff that you can do something with. So along with gathering data, so recording a session, taking notes, whatever, you can also look for specific kinds of feedback, right? How do you think I started off the session? Was that useful? How was the pacing? If you were a client, would you have felt rushed? Do you think I asked good questions? So you can, and you can go into feedback with a very specific objective. You don't have to get every piece of information about that session. In fact, I would argue it's probably better to have a focal point and to say, I'm focusing on this thing and maybe one or two things, three at the most. I'm focusing on my body language. I'm focusing on my voice. I'm focusing on my pacing. I'm focusing on, using assessment forms properly. Can you take a look at this and give me your sense of how I did?
Wow.
And there's also great tools. There's a guy called Scott Miller who does what's called feedback-informed therapy. Now that's for psychotherapists, but you can use it in coaching too. You can also give your clients feedback forms too, right? At the end of a session, a little thing to fill out and just, 2-3 questions and say, look, I would like your honest feedback on how I did. I'm not looking for you to tell me I did an awesome job. I want you to know, what was this experience like for you? And again, maybe you're looking for 1 or 2 indicators. Pacing, was the pacing right? Did you get all your questions answered? Did you leave feeling confident about your next actions? Whatever you're seeking, it should be concrete. But again, the goal is to get actionable information.
Right.
And this occurs in sort of a broader context, right? So it's not just about asking people for feedback. It's also about creating an environment, and Ray Dalio talks about this too, where feedback is good and feedback is okay and feedback is welcomed. So in a sense, before you can ask for feedback, you almost need to create that environment for your client or other coaches.
Like it's all good. Okay. You can be really honest.
Okay. Yeah, where it's going to be okay, right? And that may actually take a little bit of work before you can even get to the feedback questions.
Awesome.
And, it's really interesting. A lot of people avoid feedback because there's that like cringe response where they're just like, people are going to say mean things to me, right? Generally, I find that feedback is people want to help.
Yeah.
And they want to offer good feedback. And if you don't want to take critical feedback in the beginning, that's no problem, because I actually find it much more helpful sometimes to know what to do rather than what not to do. So I might ask another coach, listen, what do you think went well? Where do you think I was strong? Where do you think I was effective? Where do you think I was nailing it? What would you like to see me do more of? I find that way more useful feedback a lot of the times, because that's like an action plan. Like if another coach says to me, oh yeah, you know what? Your body language was really warm and really expressive. I thought that was wonderful. I'm like, good. That goes in the roster. I'm going to keep nailing that.
Right.
Or, you were pacing it really well in the beginning, but then you kind of sped up when you felt like you were running out of time, right? You kept checking your watch and you started panicking.
Right.
So, could you keep that pacing, that really good pacing that you had for the first 5 minutes? Do you think you could extend that? Oh yeah, that's good. Right? So as much as possible, if your feedback could be in the form of a what to do or what to do more of, or here's your action plan.
I love it.
Awesome.
We're definitely doing that. As far as you mentioned, kind of from psychotherapy, and we've talked a lot about, some kind of stuff from counseling psychology. So sort of a almost meta question, and you're working on the book Steal This Coaching, which I'm super excited for. And as far as the role of like counseling psychology and almost like education to personal trainers, like when I even say to my peers nowadays, I'm like, well, I'm kind of, I'm not really reading super training. I'm spending the majority of my time in motivational interviewing for nutrition and fitness, or in a lot of stuff that is much more psychology related. And so sometimes it gets into the idea of like, well, is that really like in your scope, so to speak? I've had kind of that question, and then I'm just wondering how you couch that in terms of like how far does a trainer need to go, if they have worries about like pulling out the couch and going too far. Is that ever an issue? And sort of what has been your experience with even how you explain that to people?
Yeah, and that's a great question. That's something I talk about in the book that I'm working on. Because a lot of people are like, oh, I don't want to go there at all. And I'm like, let's think about it this way. Think about your favorite bartender, right? You go there and you bitch about your day, and they ask a couple of good questions, and they really understand you because they understand the human condition. So I see counseling, psychotherapy, all that kind of stuff really for coaches, not as a way to go there into people's mother issues or whatever, but to understand human beings. And I think that understanding human beings is like a fundamental life skill. The more you understand human beings, like your favorite bartender or, anyone else who deals with humanity, I always feel like nurses, cops, tattoo artists, people like that, are people who are so intimately acquainted with the human condition and understand how people act and feel and behave, especially under stress. Like these are valuable skills that they have that the rest of us could really benefit from. And to go back to the whole thing about reality, psychology offers us a reality-based perspective on how human beings work. And as a coach, that's exactly what you want, right? You want to understand, like, why do people think and feel the things they do? Why do they do the things they do? Why do they do crazy, apparently illogical things? How can I motivate people to do what I'm asking them to do? These are fundamental life skills, whether that's in your relationship, with your partner, whether that's as a parent, whether that's as a coworker, as a coach, anything like that. So I feel that these are fundamental human life skills.
Right.
And if you're in a people business, if you're in any business where you're working with human beings, which is most of us, right? Unless you're one of those people that like only talks to machines
right.
or something. These are skills that you need. And so I give some examples of questions that are well within your scope, such as, what do you want to work on next?
Right.
Perfectly good question.
Yeah.
Right.
I recently changed. I had we kind of talked about, I had a weekly intake form that would say like, what are you struggling with? And for a while I was like, I don't know, wasn't working so well. And then I changed the question to, what would you like to try, or what would you like to experiment with? And that definitely changed the perspective a little bit in a positive way. So.
Yeah. Or like, what are you noticing right now?
Right.
Ain't no rule on asking that one.
Yeah. Yeah. I love it. Well, and then of course the other book, Why Me One Eats, awesome one. And going through this, kind of just looking over it as a, almost a cursory view, and then digging in afterwards as more like a workbook. One question I had was, obviously it's really great for any type of kind of eating, disorder type eating stuff, and that's sort of the purpose. But do you feel that the steps you took, right, of leading the person through the awareness and all the exercises could be used for almost anything, like say an unhealthy relationship with, finances or a significant other, or, just kind of take the word food and switch it out for something else?
Yeah, totally. And in fact, I have had people contact me and tell me that that's what they're doing, which is cool, right? So often it'll be coaches who maybe bought it for their clients, and for maybe the coach feels fine, but they use it for their business.
Yeah.
Or they use it for like, I mean, I know a lot of coaches have anxieties about their business.
That's totally what I did.
Right? Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah.
It happens a lot. Yeah, business and finances and marketing and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
I know a lot of coaches don't feel as confident there. And so they'll often use it for business anxieties, or I know people who've used it for family stuff, like family relationships. So, the book is about your relationship with yourself, but it can also be about your relationship with other people. So I know people who've used it for family stuff, parenting, again, coworkers, friends. Yeah, I mean, it's a really broadly applicable set of concepts, right? It's really about gaining awareness and then getting those tools to sort of self-regulate. So it really is a broad spectrum. And also the food and eating is a microcosm of your life, right? It's not like your whole life is running perfectly and then food and eating is this one little piece that juts out and is weird. No, it's embedded in the whole. It's woven through the whole thing. So who you are with food and eating is who you are elsewhere in your life in some way or another. If you're anxious about food, you're probably anxious in life. It's not like you're a super relaxed Zen master in the rest of your life, and then for some reason there's this weird little domain that you're not. So you can really think of it as a window onto anything you like, really.
Yeah. Well, it's super useful. I mean, I love it as a resource, and I'm definitely now going to just repurpose it for everything. I actually, on that same note, we have kind of talked about, and I've heard you talk about, like, coaches have to really deal with their own shit before they are going to take the responsibility and help others with trying to deal with theirs. And it's because the client will sort of stumble onto, just through the process of working together, whatever it is that the coach has that they aren't getting help with. And so sort of like in body image, when you're trying to coach body image, those issues arise for you. So I'm just wondering, when a coach needs that self-awareness, needs to deal with their own issues, what are some other examples, or what does that tend to look like of when that is going to present a problem?
Yeah, well, one of the most common ones is the imposter syndrome, right? The feeling of I'm not good enough, or people are going to find out that I'm a fraud, or people are going to find out that I don't know everything, that somehow I'm a charlatan and a fake and I will be revealed and I'm not good enough to do this. And this often comes up. Sometimes people feel it just broadly, like it's just sort of a white noise of their life. But sometimes it comes up with difficult clients, and a client comes in and they have a complex case, or maybe they're just sort of a prickly pear, personality wise, or whatever. And for some reason, you start to feel like, oh my God, I can't deal with this. I can't help this person. They're going to think I'm a dummy, or whatever goes through your mind. And that's a super, super common one. And I don't know of a single coach who hasn't had at least a whiff of the imposter syndrome at some point in their life. And I think if you don't feel at least a little bit of the imposter syndrome, you're probably a sociopath and a narcissist. So
just being real.
It's good to ask yourself that question, to calibrate yourself. Am I doing a good job? So I don't think the question that underlies it is a bad thing. But it's really where does the needle go, right? Do you have a healthy dose of skepticism about your own abilities? Good, right? Keep that fire simmering on your butt a little bit to, check yourself and not get too arrogant. But don't let that needle tip into paralyzing self-doubt.
Right.
That's a big one. So yeah, a lot of coaches feel that. And related to that is the feeling I have to know everything. I have to be an expert. That's not the job of a coach. Your job is not to be an expert. Now, you should have expertise. You should build your skills continually through life. I just enrolled in a Masters of Counseling Psychology program as of 2 days ago. I already have a PhD. I've already read widely in this area for 10, 15 years. I'm going back to school because I want someone to check my shit for me. So you should be engaging in a process of lifelong learning. You should be checking your shit. You should be doing due diligence. You should be a little bit skeptical about your own abilities, but keep that needle where it should be, right? Don't tip so far into paralyzing self-doubt. So that's a big one. Anxiety about your own abilities, I think, is probably the most common one I see for coaches.
On the continuing education side, so of course I'm going to jump at that one. So out of the, say someone wants to develop that, that counseling psychology, and is, they've done, I don't know who I'm talking about here. They've done PN1 and PN2, and they're kind of reading, motivational interviewing books. So what is sort of the next step? Should they look for a local community college course on counseling? Should they go see a counselor themselves? Or what is kind of some best practices for that like next level to really, I even looked into like doing like the motivational interviewing network of trainer, certification stuff. So I'm just wondering if you have any quick tips on that.
All of the above.
Okay. Do it all.
And I actually did all of those things. I started with a community college, like continuing education program in counseling, which was designed more for social workers. But I found it fascinating. It was wonderful. It was like, because it was designed for people working in the field, especially in like community agencies, it was so full of like good practical information that you would never get in a textbook. Like, what do you do when someone buys you a can of Coke and they shouldn't? Like if someone who doesn't have, someone who's like street active and they take their last 50 cents and they buy you a can of Coke as their intake worker, what do? You'd never hear that as in a coaching textbook, right? So that was fantastic. So continuing education, community college, whatever, often you'll find like counseling, motivational interviewing, all that kind of stuff. There's also motivational interviewing workshops, as well as other workshops like solution-focused and brief therapy is another terrific modality for coaches, because that's like problem solving, get in, get her done, short-term work. That's not excavating a client's soul. That's like someone has a problem. How do you help them with it?
Right.
So I did tons of motivational interviewing workshops that were offered at, for me, it was at York University in Toronto. So, cool. But I mean, they're all over the place.
Search around.
And you can belong to professional networks. That's great. And also, I love that you mentioned get your own counselor, because there's nothing comparable to going through your own counseling/coaching process.
Right.
I mean, we need it anyway as helping professionals. Like, they should be in your roster, just like your, nutrition coach, strength coach, massage therapist, or whoever your helping professional is. A counselor should be in your roster, because, our minds and our hearts are our tools of our job.
Right.
So you got to have your mechanic for that. Yeah. Right.
And I love what you said.
Like, if you don't have,
I love what you said on the nutrition coach side, like the higher you are in, you're a level 3 eater, whatever, like if you're this super athlete, they've got a ton of coaches. Better you are at eating, the more likely you are to think you don't need help, but probably the most likely person that does need the most help.
Totally. So. And, top race car drivers have a pit crew, right? They're not like by themselves driving around the track. Like, it's understood that to achieve the highest level of performance, you need a crew.
Right.
That's just how it is. And again, if you think of your brain and your heart and your gut as your coaching tools, those tools need maintenance.
Right.
They have to be kept in good working order.
Yeah.
So
one thing,
and also going through counseling, that is a very humbling process. And I've gone through all kinds of counseling and coaching, and shout out to Trevor Cashy, who I think is one of the most wonderful nutrition coaches out there. When I went through nutrition coaching with him, he has a totally different method than the one that I use. I use the much more precision nutrition style, like intuitive eating. He's like higher end, like grams of this, and like very mathematically precise. And I got early on, I was like, I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to compose a menu with 255 grams of something. And that was a wonderful feeling, because I was like, this is exactly what a client feels. Mm-hmm. It doesn't matter what the scale is, but that feeling of like, I don't even know how to do this.
Yeah.
That's awesome. That's what you should be feeling sometimes, to know what it's like to be a client.
Yeah. So on two questions spawn off of that. One is, I want to get a little bit into motivational interviewing, and just in the fact that so I'm looking at a lot of functional medicine continuing education courses, and some of them deal with like becoming a health coach, like a functional medicine health coach. You kind of know about the physiology, but you also get some training in the behavior change side. And one thing I'm seeing is a lot of the courses will include like a little bit on solutions focused theory, motivational interviewing, and behavior change, but it's really just like a little bit. It's really not very much at all. And one thing that it's sort of like the more you learn, the more you realize you don't know. And I've been just digging into this stuff for almost a year and a half now, hardcore, and I still feel like, and after lots and lots of practice, I feel like I'm barely starting to scratch the surface. And so I wonder if you see in the industry at all sort of like, almost like the word functional training, right? Which like can mean one completely different thing well, to two different people, the Bosu Ball guy versus the PRI guy, whatever. It's like, do you sort of see that in the same thing in the realm of like change psychology coaching? Isn't that there's the sort of the kind of at a glance, system one thinking view, and then there's like the really deep, iterative, like effortful work to actually get good at the thing. For someone to just say, oh yeah, I do motivational interviewing. Like, does that even mean anything anymore? I don't know if that's...
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think it speaks to I don't think it speaks to this particular domain necessarily, like specifically. I think that's actually a question about what does it mean to become masterful at a domain of knowledge. So I took a carpentry course once and I built a deck, and I am able to use tools.
Right.
I can use a hammer. I can use a saw. Like I can cut wood. Am I a master carpenter? No. That takes a long, long, long time and lots of practice. So even if I understand the basic mechanics of cutting wood and making a box out of it, any cupboard that I make is going to be a hideous Homer Simpson creation.
Right.
Some abomination of nature compared to what a master carpenter does, even though we can use the same tools. We can build the same structure. We can both build a deck or a box or whatever. But the level of expertise and depth of understanding and intuitive knowledge is obviously far greater for someone who's done it for 20, 30 years. So I think behavior change is exactly the same. And of course, a master carpenter can look at something and go, oh, that's not square, right? Whereas as a master coach, you can look at something and go, oh, this is what is needed. And if someone says, how do you know? You're like, it takes you a while to reconstruct the process because it's so quick. It's so seamless. And you don't know why people can't see that it's not square, because you can see it. It's not like you have different eyes or something like that. So it's a very analogous process. And I think this is where the humility part comes in. And to go back to the imposter syndrome thing, for me, there's a difference between the imposter syndrome and genuine humility. The imposter syndrome, I think, is a fairly non-productive way to be,
right?
Because it's very concerned with like, what do people think of me? Whereas humility is more like an openness. And it's a kind of a generosity about the world and saying, okay, beginner's mind today. I think I know what I know, but I recognize that that's just a small thing. And today I'm going to keep filling my cup. So every day you empty the cup and you fill it up, and you empty the cup and you fill it up. And I think humility is a really, really wonderful thing. And so to get back to the process of mastery, to recognize that, in the beginning, and you start off and you're using your tools and you read motivational interviewing and you're ready to try it out and you feel good. You feel good, and it does feel good. And go for it, right? Like, go ask those questions. Go try it out and play with it. And at the same time, recognize that every rep goes in the tank, and over time, it takes a while to build mastery. So be excited by what you're learning. Go have fun trying it. Just don't get too cocky and arrogant about it.
Yeah.
Because the second you do, the universe is going to kick you in the ass.
Yeah. Yeah, that's how it's been feeling for it's like, at first I was like, oh yeah, this is great. I'm just going to ask some questions. And then it's, gets to the point where it's like it hurts for a while. You're trying to, so yeah, that's really good to hear. So
yeah, well, I mean, it should feel effortful.
Yeah.
If you are truly learning something, it should feel effortful, and you should have to slow down your thought process and be like, okay, it's like A, and then there's B. And I'll give you an example. I think I've mentioned this before on previous podcasts, but when I was taking my counseling training, we spent 3 hours one time working on the first 30 seconds of a session. Like, what do you do when the client walks in and sits down? That's it. And we had we're writing scripts and then testing our scripts, and that doesn't work, crumpling them up, throwing them out. Everything became incredibly difficult. Like, do I say my name? Do I tell them where the bathroom is? Oh shit, I just used up the first 30 seconds. Do I tell them where to sit? No, that's wrong. So the deeper you go into your practice, the more effortful it will seem, which is good. If it starts to seem effortful, it means you're learning. Because if it's too easy, you're probably not learning. And being easy is not wrong. Like, it's nice to just get a break from all the effort. And it's nice when things come together, but there should be moments of effortfulness. And it doesn't mean that you're stupid or that you suck. It means that you're learning.
Very good. Okay, good. Because that's how it feels. So
good,
that's
good.
working.
Let it burn a little bit.
Yes. On so I know you mentioned like you're not reading, you've been in the industry for a while. You're not reading as much in health and fitness, but more learning a lot, kind of, experiencing other things, other disciplines. And so I'm wondering what sticks out from what you've been learning or the different fields you've looked into where you were able to apply some kind of like almost like lateral thinking or any things that really, you know, pulled the lever, so to speak, that gave you some insight or, allowed you to connect more with coaches or other clients or what have you.
Well, lately I've been really enjoying the works by this woman who's a Buddhist nun, but she's like the KSD of being a Buddhist nun. So she curses. She takes a lot of the traditional Buddhist stuff, concepts and whatever, and translates into like what regular people would talk about and think about. So her name is Pemma Chodron. I don't know how to say her last name. There's lots of umlauts in it. So anyway, Pemma Chodron. And she's a wonderful writer, just simple,
I've heard
clear.
of that, yeah.
Yeah. And so she has a number of excellent books, but the one I keep returning to recently is The Places That Scare You. Mm-hmm. There's two, The Places That Scare You and When Things Fall Apart. And I have been reading these and rereading these and rereading these and just over and over, like almost obsessively rereading them. Because for me, this is a big transition period in my life. Like I said, I just moved to Vancouver from Toronto, and I'm sitting in an apartment full of boxes.
On a lawn chair?
On a lawn chair, because I'm a fancy lady. And, and so I've lived in Toronto my whole life, and now to suddenly uproot and come to a new city where I don't really know anyone, like don't have a concept of it, like that's quite a fragmentation. So, I love her work because it's so much about, like Ray Dalio, confronting reality and being able to be present with reality and understanding that the process of change is this continual falling apart, coming back together, falling apart, coming back together, fragmenting, reassembling, and that this is a very natural process. Because I think clients often feel a bit freaked out when they start because they're just like, I feel like I'm falling apart. Clients who are struggling with eating are like, I'm binging more. I'm like, hang in there. It's cool. Because what's happened is your stress level has gone up a little bit. Now we're playing the edge of the sandbox and we're pushing into change, and resistance doesn't like that. So resistance is going to shove back on you hard. Mm. So let's keep going into the weirdness and the ickiness and the grossness. So I love her work for working with clients because she's very much like, here's how it works. Shit's going to fall apart and come back together. Cool. And it's, here's how to be with it. So Pemma Chodron, 2 thumbs up.
Nice.
Beautiful writing. And there's cursing in it. She's like, shit happens. And
yes.
I'm like, yes.
I don't trust
my form of spiritual practice.
I don't trust people who don't say fuck.
100%.
So I want to get to a few audience questions. They're just a couple of my close Facebook friends. So the first comes from BFF, Lucy Hendricks, down in Enhancing Life, Kentucky. So her first question is, what do you do with a spouse or family that's not supportive or sabotaging goals? Kill them!
Oh, family and spouses. Yeah, that's such a complicated issue, isn't it? It really is. So, like, are we talking about a client's spouse?
Yep.
Yeah.
Her spouse is watching, so we have to.
Yeah. I'm sure her spouse is excellent, but it's other people's spouse. That's one of the things I try to communicate to clients is that change proceeds for everyone at different rates. And we are in our own change process. So if you're a client, you are looking to change. So you have said, yes, I would like to initiate, at least, maybe not continue with, but I would like to initiate the change process. So you're now going along at a certain speed, changing. Other people are not changing at the same speed as you. And in fact, may sometimes feel like your change asks them to look at things in their life that they're maybe not okay with. And in fact, I heard someone say this very recently. A friend of mine is going through a wonderful transformation. She's taken charge of her health and she's kicking ass and she looks amazing. And people have actually said to her, you know what? I'm so happy for you. At the same time, your transformation is making me realize that I have avoided things in my life. So so the first step is helping clients understand that those feelings are going to come up for other people. As we change, we prompt resistance in ourselves, and we'll also prompt resistance in other people. And that's okay. I mean, it won't always happen, but that's okay, and it's normal if it does. So to understand that this is a normal process, and to not see it as like, oh, you're not supporting me, you're an asshole. Don't look at it like that. It's about them. You're pushing into your own change, and you're kind of poking at their edges a little bit too. And that may or may not be comfortable for them. The second piece is handle your own shit first. So, as much as possible, forge ahead on your journey. Now, if you need to have some compromises, if you need to fiddle with some stuff, if you need to negotiate and figure some stuff out, do it. Any means necessary in a way, like, just think about various strategies that you can use. So let's say you have a spouse who's like, we're not taking any of the junk food out of this house. Okay. Could we put it in a certain place? Mm-hmm. Right? With me, I'm 5 feet tall, so anything on a high shelf is automatically inaccessible.
Very sumptuous.
So it's like, if there's something I don't want to know about or want to make inconvenient, just stick it on a high shelf, no problem, right? Now it's inconvenient enough, I'm like, nah, I can't be bothered to get to. So sometimes, you can negotiate things. Right. Sometimes you can have a grown-up conversation and say, look, here's what I need, here's what I'm feeling from you. Is there a place we can get to in the middle? And I think a lot of people, it's interesting how a lot of people resist even negotiating, even the most basic form of negotiation with their spouse, which to me is like, maybe think about that. Right?
Yeah. Well, there's a great Patrick Lencioni talk where he talks about like I think it's the key, I forgot exactly what it's called, but it's like, the 5 maybe dysfunctions of a team. Maybe I think it's one of them. It's like one of them is that they never fight. So, and Mark Fisher talked about this, how it's like with your team, if you have a team or a relationship that never argues, then it's like that's sort of just as big of a red flag as one that's like constantly arguing, right? It's like that middle ground. So
yeah, for sure. And in the PN coaching program, we actually teach like relationship skills and asking for what you want, because for a lot of clients, this is one of the first times that they've ever even asked for what they want or what they need. So you'll have clients saying, well, I can't lose this from the house because the kids like it. And I'm like, okay, how old are your kids? You know what I mean? Like,
do they drive?
Are these like, are they like 35 and they can hit you with something? I don't know. Like to me, people really, so I often gently encourage clients to investigate and be curious about the level of authority that they're giving to other people in their lives too, right? Mm-hmm. Like, and I keep bringing it back to handle your own shit, right? You can't do anything about what your spouse and family members say. You can only handle your own shit, reinforce your own boundaries. And there's different ways to do that. You don't have to come down on people like a hammer and say, here's how it's going to be. But you can say, what do you need to be okay in this household? Here's what I need to be okay in this household. Can we be reasonable? Can we do business? Yeah. Can we come to some kind of reasonable way? If mafia can do it, surely we can too, right? But if that doesn't happen, there's got to be ways for you to handle your shit, like honestly. And I joke that coaching sometimes breaks up marriages, right? Because when one partner starts to come into themselves and ask for what they want, sometimes people realize it's unsustainable. That's the worst case scenario. Right. A lot of the time, just having grown-up conversations works just fine.
And could save a marriage, maybe. So
yeah, like what? And I mean, for an unsupportive spouse, a great question is, how can I help you get what you need? Like, what are you worried about with my change? Is there some way that I can make this easier for you? Sometimes the spouse is concerned about things, right? Or family members are concerned about things. At one point in my body transformation journey, my whole family was concerned I was getting too skinny, right? Like they're not accustomed to what a lean person looks like, mm-hmm. right? So they're just like, what's wrong with you?
Yeah. Are you okay, baby?
I know, right? Like, because in fitness, there's a different aesthetic than just in the rest of North America, right? So if you're walking around at even 20% body fat, people are like, I don't know, you're looking a little unhealthy, right? So yeah, sometimes that's the thing. People just are worried.
Right.
Like, where is this going to go? Is this person going to neglect their kids? Are they going to leave me? What if they get too good? Like, there might be fears underneath that
Right.
too, right?
Yeah.
So it's a rich tapestry. But basically, handle your shit, I think is probably.
I mean, that's money. That honestly
Handle your
is,
shit.
yeah, that is an amazing answer. So another,
Yeah.
I actually have
And
a little bit of a side question, like that, in listening to all of these podcasts, it's like the reaction from a lot of other podcast hosts is the same as my reaction when I talk to you. That it's like sometimes you just say shit that's just like, holy shit, how did she just come up with that? And it's like so many people like really when they're talking to you, they really always are remarking like, that's just Krista Scott Dixon. That's a KSDism. There she goes again. And it's like I definitely do sort of like how do you think that comes about? Do you think you have some sort of weird superpower about just answering these questions, or what are your thoughts on it?
I would love to say it so that I'm a genius, but honestly, like I have been in this business a really long time. I have gone through my own process. I have thought about these questions for a really long time, and so I mean, it's the same way when you interview anyone I think with a ton of experience in the industry about their own area of expertise, is that they have been grappling with these questions for a long time. Or maybe 5 years ago, someone asked them this exact same question. They were like, I don't know. And so afterwards they were mad about it. They were like, oh, I got to come up with an answer. Like that happened to me even this past year. Someone asked me something in a seminar. I was like, damn it, I don't have a good response for that. And so it made me noodle on it and really chew on it. So, a lot of it is just time and experience and going through the process myself and chewing on the questions that emerge. So you're seeing me at the end of a 20-year process.
Overnight.
Right? So
overnight success.
I know, I'm an overnight success. 10 years of post-secondary education, 10 years of teaching, this is how it is. So it's not like I'm some kind of super genius.
No. I still
but
think
it also points to the value of expertise, right? It's okay, you can think I am. This points to the lifelong process of mastery, right? Young coaches are coming out and they're like, wow, like so-and-so who I admire in the industry seems really smart. They seem to have all the answers. They seem to have it all together. Yeah, it's because we put in the reps. That's all it is. We put in the reps.
Yeah. I sometimes have younger, coaches, like when they first started calling me a mentor, I was like, are you fucking kidding me? I don't know shit. So it's like, I guess that is just reps on reps. Same old story. So on that note, how has a failure or an apparent failure set you up for later success? Or do you have like a favorite failure of yours?
Well, I mean, I failed academia for a long, long time. I left academia. I just quit, walked away. But for a long time, I felt like that was a failure. Like I could not hack it. I was not smart enough. I didn't work hard enough, which is ridiculous because at one time I was working 4 jobs. Like it was crazy. But I felt like I couldn't hack it. I didn't get it. I didn't have what it took to succeed in academia. And now I'm of the mind of like, if you have what it takes to succeed in academia, maybe that's not such a good thing. Right. maybe you two are a sociopath or just incredibly resilient or something. I don't know, but yeah, like I failed academia, and also after that, I walked around for a long time thinking, I need to keep my how is it? I was thinking about this. I would work 9 to 5. Because I was like, what if I have to get an office job and I'm going to fail that because I won't be good in an office? Like now the thought is ludicrous to me because I'm like, I hope I fail working in an office. I hope I never work in an office again. Yeah. I would rather, dig holes all day long in the hot sun than work in an office. But yeah, so I failed academia. I failed at the culture. I failed at their performance, which is not objectively true. I actually performed extremely well.
But you learned a lot there that sort of set you up for that sort of later successes.
Hugely. And I think failing within an environment, failing a whole sphere gives you perspective on how cultures are created and maintained and how it can be very dangerous to want to belong so bad that you are willing to carve off parts of yourself to become part of that culture. So in order to succeed in academia, in order to not fail it, I would have had to carve off pieces of myself and discard them. And I would have had to become an entirely different person. So that failure taught me that distress in an environment that demands inauthenticity of you is not your problem. It's actually an important sign. Mm-hmm. So if you are in some environment where you're feeling extreme distress for a long time, and it's not just like the beginner's jitters or anything like that, pay attention to that. That's what that taught me. It taught me that there's nothing wrong with me. There's a ton right with me, because all my signals were like, this is wrong, this is wrong. All my like blinky lights on my dashboard were like, stop it.
Right.
So that's what that failure taught me. And I think a lot of us are in situations where we feel distressed or we feel anxious, we feel depressed, we feel whatever. And we think there's something wrong with us. We're like, God, why am I so depressed? Why do I suck so bad? Why am I so anxious? Why is this happening? Maybe there's nothing wrong with you. Maybe you're a sane person in an insane situation. Think about that. Right? And with clients, it's like, why did this diet make me crazy? Why did this workout make me crazy? Why did participating in this community make me crazy? Maybe they're crazy.
Yeah.
Right? Like maybe you're being totally sane. Maybe, you're binge eating after restriction because that's the sane thing to do. Right. So failing taught me that, maybe what you're doing and feeling is actually extremely sane.
Maybe you're just going against some evolutionarily very safe homeostatic mechanisms that you'll never escape.
Yes. And so, again, face reality. Yeah. But, the other thing about failure, it taught me that and this is going to sound really morbid, I don't mean it to, so bear with me. But as you go through
Come
life...
on, I have the death clock.
All right, that's true. Okay, let's go there. Let's face our own mortality. But basically, it's like everything in life that you hang your hat on, at some point, you will lose. Especially if that's attached to your identity. Your health, when I was younger, I had a pretty serious back injury that knocked me out for like a year or two. So all of a sudden my identity as a fit person, bye-bye, right? I was shuffling around like a 93-year-old, some 93-year-olds.
Yeah.
All of a sudden my identity as an academic, which I'd cultured for a long, long time, gone. Steady job, gone. Right? Like, so over the course of your life, all of these things that you attach yourself to, you will lose. Fit body, abs, youth, how much you can deadlift, any of that shit, it's going to go. Mm-hmm. And I don't mean to say like the clock is ticking or anything like that, but to understand that you need to build an identity that's more robust than that, right, and more flexible. Like Pemma Chodron says, can fall apart and come back together. So if you're listening to this and your identity is attached to your abs, or the fact that you have a certain dietary philosophy, or that you can deadlift that much, or whatever it is, get ready to lose it.
Right.
Because it's going to go. You can't be a champion deadlifter until you die. It's just not going to happen.
And if your identity is abs and deadlifting, and you're a coach that's interested in making more money, that's probably not going to be the number 1 and 2 asset of doing that. If you can help people, you're going to make money. If you have sweet abs, that's not really a factor.
Yes, you may want to build it out. You may want to kind of just flesh out the human being part of yourself a little bit more.
Cool. I do want to get through just these audience questions so they can be super happy. So I had a few ask along the lines of like, what's the best approach to change? If a client has negative self-talk that's been deeply ingrained through their life experiences, interactions, or just dealing with people that are kind of stuck in a negativity bias.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, the first thing to accept is that you're not going to change a lifelong habit of that. But one of the tricks that I like, now I forget what discipline this comes from, but in the book I call it, in my Why Me Want, I call it Talking to the Monster. I will often ask people to so I'll do 2 things. First of all, I will distinguish the self-talk from the person, right? So the self-talk is not them. I will give it a character. And it doesn't even have to be like an actual character, but I'll say something like, what does the resistance voice say? Or what is that part of you saying? Or what is the self-talk that you are hearing? Just to somehow pull the person away from the self-talk. So they start to like distance themselves from a little bit. And then the second thing I'll do is actually just ask them what it's saying. and I will externalize it. I'll write it down, or I'll ask them to type it out, and then I'll say it back to them, right? Okay, so what you're saying is that the resistance voice is saying that you're going to fail because you fail everything. Is that accurate? Like, I pretend that I'm checking for understanding, right? And sometimes I am, but the goal is to sort of get them to hear that voice back to themselves, whether they read it, they see it, they hear it in my voice. So the more you can kind of make that voice audible to them, a lot of times what will happen is they'll say it out loud. They'll say, like, yeah, I feel like I'm always just a failure. Wow, that's really fucked up now that I've just said it.
Yeah.
Right? So externalizing it, and again, especially if they can hear it in your voice, if I say, like, so what you're saying is, and I might even exaggerate a little bit, what you're saying is you're basically just a complete fuck up. Is that what the resistance voice is saying? And you're like, wow, yeah, God, that sounds crazy. I don't want to have that in my head, right? So a lot of the time, that externalization will shift it for them. Now, if it doesn't, they might say, yeah, you know what, I'm just a failure. Then I go another step and say, what does it feel like to hear that? What is that like? You don't have to say, what does that feel like? What is that like to hear that voice? Wow, it's really demoralizing. Oh yeah, okay, so it really brings you down, eh? Yeah. Leave it there.
Just
let that digest.
Let's just marinate in that for a while.
Yeah, because what will happen generally is they'll come back in a week and be like, I was thinking about it, and I don't know if that's what I want in my head.
Yeah.
So, because I think the temptation for a lot of coaches is to immediately hammer that negative self-talk, right? I don't want to hear that. Let's stay positive, blah, 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 like to attack it. But that negative self-talk generally has a protective value. It protects people from shame, from criticism, from judgment. I call it ninja crapping.
Right.
If you can crap on yourself quickly, like the speed of a ninja, then no one else can crap on you because you're crapping on yourself harder, right? Like, so if you can immediately go, oh, it's okay, I know that I suck. You don't have to tell me that I suck because I just crap myself way before you can. Then that's just a way of avoiding criticism and judgment and keeping yourself safe. So if you understand that the negative self-talk often has a protective value, you can find out what the job of protection also is, right? Is it keeping you safe? Okay, let's build safety in our coaching relationship. That's another way to do it. So for example, all the time in martial arts, people will be like, oh, I suck at this. Because the techniques are very difficult to learn. You might have to do something 500 times before you even start to get it. So you'll try it once, you'll try a throw, and you'll be like, oh, I really suck at this, right? You can also create an environment where it's okay to suck, right? You can say, hey, you know what, let's suck at this. Let's do this 20 times and just be shitty at it. Oh, okay.
Awesome. I love it.
Yeah. But don't rush at this. Like, don't rush at the negative self-talk and like hammer on the door and be like, you have to change now. We need to. That's not going to work.
Yeah.
Right? The negative self-talk has a protective value. So the more you attack it, the more it will protect.
I love it. So last question. This is from actually Lucy's man, Dave Wilton, again in Kentucky. So one thing we've talked about, just to sort of set this question up, is like the idea that a coach has to be like an athlete, and they need to be able to switch from max parasympathetic, tender love and care to like sympathetic sometimes, like, yo, you need to get your shit together. Kind of like really being a more direct type coach. So he kind of talks about one of his clients that, lost a ton of weight and then regained some and is sort of at the point where he's, making excuses. He looks up to, the coach. He doesn't want to disappoint him and is sort of, more or less lying, right? He's kind of bullshitting about what's going on, and he's sort of like saying he doesn't have time for anything. And the coach's question is like, I clearly see through his, BS. I want to call him out, be like, dude, I know you're not busy, but he also doesn't want to scare him. So he's kind of wondering like, where is that middle ground, or what should he, which direction should he take in that situation?
Mm-hmm. And I love that he's framed it that way. So he clearly intuits that there is a bit of a dimension of scaring, right? Because there are those clients that thrive on tough love. Like you just hit them and you're like, come on, you stupid asshole. What the hell are you doing? Like there is that, I call them the 1% client that loves whatever thing is wrong or different or the thing that we're not supposed to do. There's that 1% that thrives on it, right? It's like those bacteria that live on something corrosive, like sulfuric acid or something like that no one else can.
Extremophiles.
That's extremophiles, exactly. Well, you have extremophile clients. So, especially like a lot of ex-military or, tactical kind of people love the cut the shit approach.
Yeah.
They'll often thrive on it. It really works for them, right? But if you have a client who you start to sense is like going to get threatened by it, which is most people, I don't really think the kind of tough love approach really works. And to understand why that is true, it helps to understand how human relationships work and even really just primate relationships as a species, which is that we seek safety in relationships. Like in order to change, we need to feel safe. We need to feel loved. We need to feel accepted. We need to feel worthy. And that's a bit of a paradox, right? Because you think, well, how come I can't just ass kick someone into change? Well, ass kicking results in a threat response. So when you come at me, I'm just like, I'm bracing. I'm not going to be creative. I'm not going to be open. Even my whole posture is just like, it's closed, it's closed off, it's protective. So to feel relaxed or to feel open, I need to be relaxed, right? I need to allow you to approach. So your goal as a coach is to create safety, security, trust, respect. Clients need to feel like it's okay to just relax.
So it's kind of like dating. You can't just
Very
go.
much.
You can't just go in there trying to close.
Yep. So when are we getting married? And especially if you have had a client who's grappled with health or weight or whatever for a long time, they already feel like shit. So they're already like half in the bracing posture. Mm-hmm. If there's someone who is visibly out of shape, they feel it. They walk around in the world like that, right? So their default setting is here. You got to do extra work to open them up and calm them down. So love, acceptance, compassion, curiosity. Curiosity opens people up too. So let's say you have this client who's not doing what he's supposed to be doing, or he's, whatever. Get curious about that. Have a grown-up conversation. And I mean, this is where the tough love can come in. I call it grown-up conversations. Sitting down, adult to adult, and say, listen, here's what I'm noticing. Here's what I've observed. What do you make of that? Can you help me understand what's happening here? I'm noticing that this is happening and this is happening. Now you mentioned, wanting to lose weight, and at the same time you're struggling with your eating. What are you seeing in your own behavior? How do we make sense of this? So you show up with this very compassionate curiosity approach, and so you can name what is going on. Absolutely. Right? Here is what I'm seeing. The more objective, the better too, right? You've missed 5 out of 3 or 3 out of 5 sessions. Is there something happening? So you can name it, describe it, but then your next tactic is compassion, curiosity. Make your concerned, compassionate, curious face.
Right.
What's happening for you? Do we need to break something down? Yes, exactly. See, I'm
going to practice that in the mirror.
Yeah. But compassion, curiosity is such a wonderful problem solver, because then the client's like, yeah, you know what? I feel like it's just so crazy lately with work and everything. You're like, okay, cool.
Right.
You know what? Let's see if we can work through the blocks. And I also like to conceptualize whatever's acting against change as something outside the client, right? Something is blocking you. You are not bad. You are not the problem. It's not that you suck, it's that something is blocking you. And again, the more we can separate the person from the problem, the better. Because now we can both stand outside the problem and look at the problem together and say, okay, what is the block here that is outside of you? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes total sense. Like, you may be doing something not beneficial, but there's nothing wrong with you.
Yeah. And maybe what you're doing has a reason to be there, right? I have lots of clients who are busy, working shift, they have kids, whatever. And so hitting up the fast food, it's so much easier. And they're just like, they have frazzled, crazy lives. So me coming down on them hard going, you're not packing a healthy lunch. Come on, man, that's not going to work.
Right.
But to say, okay, what's blocking you? Okay, it sounds like your schedule is really challenging you here. I'm wondering if there's ways that we can work through that. It sounds like you're struggling with skill, with sleep, with whatever. Is there a way that we can work around that? And another question I like to ask is, what is the easiest, laziest, low-hanging, fruitiest approach to this? I have a client who's a new mom. She works full-time. Her partner travels, so she's often like on her own. And, cooking for her is just off the table.
Yeah.
And I'm like, you got more money than time. Why don't you just get a healthy meal delivery service, or she might stop at Whole Foods for her lunch. Pick up dinner there too. I can do that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you totally can.
Yeah.
Right, but that's too easy. Yeah, make it easy, make it lazy, make it convenient. So often asking clients, what's the easiest, laziest, low-hanging, fruitiest thing you can do? They're like, supposed to be easy?
Thought this was supposed to be painful.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I thought I was supposed to like hand pluck organic sprouts for dinner. No, dude, please, let's be real. Buy a bag of baby and call it.
I love it.
So asking what the easiest way often helps clients flip their thinking a little bit as well.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. I am so grateful for your time today. And I think it's kind of like everyone who gets to work with you, and over time they just sort of feel like they just want to like bottle up that magic and give it to the world. So super grateful for everything you do and what you bring to the field. So really appreciate your time, and thanks everyone for watching. And we will see you next time on the Strong Nerd Show.
Woohoo!